Tonight's meeting is being broadcast through Milford TV, and other media are also in attendance. If anyone would like to make a video or audio recording of this meeting, please let me know. Thank you for our large audience here tonight. So the first agenda item tonight is approval of minutes. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last regular session on Thursday, May 2nd, 2019. And if so, is there any discussion? Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, I think there's just one thing omitted from the minutes, which was the selection of the budget subcommittee.
Thank you. That was a great catch, and Dr.
I'll make
McIntyre is
that
adding that in
adjustment.
for us.
Absolutely.
So I guess I'd motion to approve them with the addition of budget subcommittee being established with myself,
Laura
Jimmy, and
Jim.
Laura.
Any other comments or issues with the minutes that people noted? All right, so John made a motion to approve the minutes with that correction. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, I think that brings us up to announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Are there any members who have announcements? Yes.
I just want to say that, last night I had a chance to go to the 9th annual Dick Corbin senior athletes night, and I'm amazed every year on the great job that these kids do. I think at one point Pete Boucher, the athletic director, didn't want to name off all the kids that broke records, so he just told everyone to stand up. It had to be like close to 15 kids. And from also told that these kids, on all that stuff that they do, the great accomplishments, that other schools are trying to model what we do, again, because we're awesome, on how we track all the athletes. I think it was the Iron Hawk athlete, kids that do 4 sports or a sport for every year. So that's pretty cool that they're doing. I just want to congratulate all the students, too. They really deserve all the hard work that they've been doing. So that was a good night last night. You were there as well, Jen, so it was a pretty
So if I can add one piece to that, and I think Joe's 100% correct, it was a phenomenal evening. But we have 27 student athletes who are going to be continuing their athletic careers in college. And, Jen and I had an opportunity to talk about the colleges that the students were being accepted to. It was, Boston College, Holy Cross, Northeastern, UMass Amherst, and kind of a mix of a lot of places, Clemson, all over the country, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, all over the country. So I think it speaks that we have scholar athletes just as well as athletes. So fantastic. So I'm just echoing what Joe was saying.
It's a great night. Thank you, Joe. Craig.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody that came out to our presentation of the social media documentary that we had. And then I wanted to thank Dr. Perriello, Joni Geltman, Amy Leone, Josh Otland, Cassie Probert, and Amy's son, Gabriel, who participated in the panel discussion afterwards. I thought it was a great event, and we were able to offer families an opportunity to purchase it on their own if they wanted to, but we had good feedback, so it was a good event.
We just also wanted to congratulate the people who organized the Milford Days last Saturday. Our bands were represented, lots of youth sports, lots of people in this room were there, but it was a great turnout, just a great event for Milford. I saw you there as well, Lisa. Just a really nice community event. One of our former members, Joe Marias, was one of the key organizers of that, and it really makes you feel proud to be part of this community. So, and that our schools were involved too was great. All right. With that, we will move on to invitation to speak. I don't see much going on out there other than 2 people who are on the agenda. So I think we can move right into the 2019-2020 Family Handbook and School Improvement Plans from Brookside and Memorial Schools. Would you like to come up together, or how do you? Okay, perfect. Do you have a preference if you want to start with your handbooks or the school improvement plans?
We'll start with the school improvement plans, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, thank you for having us both here tonight.
Welcome.
So Eric and I we've been working a lot together this past year between Brookside and Memorial, and even a lot with Mr. Kernan as well. So when it came time to work on our school improvement plan, we did do it together. So you can see that the first 3 goals are are really the same.
Mm-hmm.
So we would just take you right through that, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Sounds good. So, as Mrs. Burns said, the goal is always to keep Brookside and Memorial alive. We want to make sure that we are on the same page because we share a lot of students. So if students move from Brookside to Memorial, we want to make sure that the content, the curriculum, the instruction are very, very similar. And you'll see that that's really reflected in our school improvement plan. So as we look at goal number 1, we start with some of the standardized assessments and performance assessments. So as you guys know, one of the things we're really looking at doing is assessing our students and using some of the data that we get from those assessments. Currently, we're in the process of adopting a standardized assessment tool. We're looking at 2 different tools, iReady as well as Star 360. We're piloting each of those tools in our schools as we speak, and at the end of the year, we'll be taking a look at each of them to make a decision on which tool is the best fit for Milford Public Schools. Part of having those tools and all that information is that you have to use the data that you're getting from it. You want to use it. You want to make sure that it's driving a lot of things that you're doing instructionally and making decisions, best instructional decisions for our students. So, and that is really the focus of goal number 1. So as you see, we talk about some of the standardized assessments, how we're going to be using it, and then we go into the different things that we're going to be doing with some of that data. So with that data, we really want to make sure, as I said, that we're utilizing it. So the question becomes, how are we using it? And we want to make sure that we're sitting down with our staff, we're talking about it, we're working through it, and really helping it drive what we're doing in the classroom.
Okay, so for me, just our goal, his goal 1 and my goal 2 are the same. They're just flopped, but they are the same. It's just that your goal 1's my goal 2. So then we believe that goal leads right into our second goal, which would be my first, your second. Sorry to confuse. So where we are developing a process to collect the data and analyzing the data and implementing plans at the building level, classroom level, to help with whatever deficiencies where they may lie. So we're really working to use the information that we have to really have data-driven instruction. So how our students are doing is how we're going to plan our instruction. Another piece of that, so there's obviously the standardized piece, but then we're also working with an organization that's helping us work through some performance assessments where we would allow students to show us what they know versus in this case, iReady or Star 360 is a computerized test, but so that's, maybe more in line with the MCAS or something like that. But this would be, well, not quite like the MCAS because would be given 3 times a year, but having an opportunity for students to show what they know versus on a test one day. So.
And the thought process is that all of our students have different strengths, and some of the students do really well in the standardized tests, and some of them don't always do so well. So with some of these performance assessments, they'll be able to actually complete projects, and that will be able to show their teachers if they've mastered those skills. Are they able to apply some of the things that they've actually learned in class? So it's just a different way of assessing, a different way of looking at student learning. And it's also wonderful because we're able to use some of that information to triangulate truly where they are and what they're doing. Because with standardized assessments, one thing we know is it's just a snapshot of time. So if we take a test on Tuesday, it doesn't tell me if little Billy was up late on Monday night watching Monday Night Football. It doesn't tell me if he didn't do so well because he had a fight with his mom in the morning. So it's a snapshot of time. So this will actually give us another data point that we can use to really see where they are, where their challenges are, where their successes are as we move forward that really helps support the students. Do you guys have any questions about goals 1 or 2?
Laura?
Thank you so much for walking me through those. I guess I have a question. There are a lot of PDs listed here for our teachers. Do you feel as though that there's going to be enough time in PD already built into the schedule that teachers are going to get the proper training in order to be successful?
I do think there is professional development. We have some more time next year in the new contract that's moving forward. So we have at least 5 more after-school days that we'll have with the staff. And we
Okay.
also would plan to use the teachers are all on teams, and they have at least one period a week where they're working together in collaborative teams as well. So there will be certainly some PD that needs PD built in for, whichever assessment tool we
Right,
go
for the new
go
tools,
with.
yep.
But we feel that we worked through that this year by, pulling teachers for 2 hours and providing coverage here and there.
Okay.
So between our in-service time and our contractual time, I think that we will be able to manage it. We really we have so many things that we really want to accomplish, but we really tried to stay focused and take work on one big thing rather than a million little things. So.
No, and I'd like to echo that. So if you look at goals 1 and 2, to me, those two fit perfectly together. And because they fit so well together, that means that we can really be thoughtful about how we use our PDs. Now, there are going to be some times that we'd like to get a little creative in how we use it and what we do, such as some examples this year where we've had some subs in, so we've been able to create some opportunities throughout the course of the day to provide some professional development. But as Mrs. Burns said, we will have some additional opportunities throughout the course of next year per the master contract that give us the opportunity to have some additional PDs we didn't have this year. But also using those TCC times, I think is very important, where you're able to sit down, not with your whole staff, but a smaller group of people to really sit down, to look at it, to talk about strengths and challenges. So-and-so did really well with double-digit addition. What were they doing? And having some of those conversations.
And I think it will work with our instructional coach as well to help us provide some of that support and guidance. Our instructional coach worked with groups of teachers this year and in a professional learning community where the teachers volunteered to participate. So we're thinking that may also be something that people may choose to participate in as well.
How are we getting close to deciding between iReady and Star 360? How are you soliciting feedback for that?
So the staff has been giving us some ongoing feedback at both schools. We've been collecting that information at Brookside and Memorial, and we're trying to really be aligned also with Woodland, Woodland Elementary School. So they have piloted iReady, and they're starting to, or have had a few weeks ago started to do some work with Star 360, because the goal would be that it would be K to, or 1 through 5 anyway. I'm not sure about middle school. Craig's saying yes.
Let me jump in.
Okay.
I'm not trying to cut you off. You're
That's
exactly
okay.
spot on. And I think there are some teachers at Memorial and Brookside who have used both, but the Woodland teachers, the ones that are going to use Star 360, there's maybe 10 or so. They all gave the iReady, and then they're all going to give Star 360. So, not that everyone's feedback is important, but I think it's important to especially hear from people that have seen both and the challenges of both. But they've also created a working document that is actually really good. There's a lot of good feedback on that through a Google Doc that people are just feeding different comments on. So it's been really good.
So our hope is that, we're already finding with both assessments that there's some excitement about, with the information that we're already able to see, and some excitement to use the information. And so that's great about both tools. I think that it will come down to which gives us the best information for us to move forward with, because they are very similar. One takes a little bit more time than the other, but other than that, they're very similar, and it will just come down to which one gives us more information or the best information on our students. So we're hoping that we know we will be working together with our curriculum team leaders to make a decision for either of those tools moving forward, in coordination with Woodland as well.
Megan?
I just have a question, and probably for Craig as well. Craig, what's the timeline? I'm assuming the implementation itself is pretty quick in terms of being able to turn it on. When do you anticipate making the decision?
Well, we're waiting on the last group to take the star before we can pull teachers together. But next year, at the beginning of the year.
So we haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, the goal is to have it in September, rolling out in September.
I commend you both for the collaboration. I think that given that we have two K-2 schools, it makes a lot of sense that we're sort of aligning what we're doing. Two questions on that. Could you speak to a little bit about the collaboration between the school councils in developing this, how that worked? And then also, do you anticipate that the professional, like the data analysis will also be collaborated? So if, this, I don't know, I'm making this up, but one room has this like amazing results on one thing, that you would be able to leverage that between the schools as well.
I think that you have a great point about the school councils working together. We didn't bring our school councils together, but I think that certainly moving forward in the future, as we work to align ourselves, I think that's a great suggestion that we would possibly meet with both councils when we're really looking at our school improvement plan. I think that's a good suggestion. But we didn't really this year. We worked and then we presented it to the school council in different drafts for feedback. So.
Got it. Thanks.
And then the second question was
around the data analysis. And don't get me wrong, right? You got to start somewhere, and not that day one you're looking between the schools, but at some point would you be leveraging the analysis portion as well?
So at this point, we've worked together a little bit on that because we had our own we had at least one training together where we were looking at some information that we already had in front of us, and we both have access to each other's schools.
Oh, okay.
So we were we have started those conversations together about looking at particular grade levels or particular different areas in our schools.
Could you maybe, Lisa, also speak to what are the content areas in 1 and 2 that are assessed? Is it?
So it's reading. So reading, and there's 2 parts. In iReady, there's 2 parts. There's a reading and a math.
Okay.
In STAR, is it all in one? Are they assessed all in one assessment?
No, there's still 2.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So reading and math for both.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
And given multiple times throughout the course of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right, I think a lot of that work that you're talking about is going to start with CTLs. So
Okay.
we bring the curriculum team leaders together once a month, and I think that a lot of the work that you're talking about, we're looking at both schools. We'll probably start there,
Okay.
and then we'll trickle it down from there.
And truly, Craig, that's probably jumping the gun now that I think about it, because you'll have so much powerful data within your school. I'm just thinking, given that you're here together
It's
in the
not, though.
collaboration
It-
piece,
it
kind of.
makes absolute sense
Okay.
that
But
the schools work together, and they do work together. The problem is the time to get to work together. In the 5 Tuesdays that we have coming up, so we have 10 now. It's typically a faculty meeting. We'll have 5 additional, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want that time, and I think if they're able to stay to this school improvement plan, it'll keep them focused on, okay, we're going to use those Tuesdays for data analysis.
Got it.
And I think it'll be good.
But Meg, it'll also help us, when we are working together, identify if there's any gaps in our curriculum that we need to be looking at. So if we're looking at something and we both notice that there's an area that we find common across both schools, we certainly would be able to look at that further and make some changes that might need to be made for all the students across both schools.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
I think it's also a nice piece with the vertical articulation when you're starting to have conversations with Woodland about what they're seeing, strengths and challenges. It's just a common piece of data that you can always refer back to.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks.
One thing I could add also, and I probably should have said thank you to town meeting for passing our budget the other night, but one of the positions, right, that's coming out of that is a math director, math coordinator. So I would, really hope that person, part of their role will be to help kind of check in both buildings plus Woodland and help kind of be that liaison between the schools in terms of what's happening, right? So they can kind of be a mouthpiece for, I saw this at Memorial, I saw this at Brookside. So I think positions like that, and I'm so grateful that got approved, because I think that'll really help the work moving forward too.
At a time when the data's available, which is so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's great, we probably both would love to say we would have an instructional coach at both schools, but it's been great that we share one so that, we are able to have those conversations the instructional coach may say, oh, I'm doing this at Brookside, what do you think about working together on something at Memorial? So I envision that she'll be able to help us, move things forward as well.
Right.
It's a good point, though. It's definitely needed in both schools, because at different points, kind of, her schedule gets really tight, and they end up, things get missed because she can't be in both places at once, so that's a good point.
And as she begins to catch on at one school,
Yep.
it's going to be much more challenging.
Are we ready for, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
When you talk about the performance assessments, is that within the iReady in the STAR 360, or is this something in parallel to?
Good question. It'll be in parallel too.
In parallel.
So it's not within iReady or STAR 360. It's a separate assessment altogether.
Yeah.
And we'll be partnering with an outside organization as we start to look at that, develop those, and move forward.
Yeah. Is that like a digital format like iReady and STAR 360, or is it more of a pen and paper and kind of?
More of a pen and paper, because the kids will actually be able to sit down and do it, actually hands-on some of it, depending on how it's structured.
Yeah. In both of those, it's in parallel that you'd use the digital and the pen to paper assessments, and you can kind of, it's assessing two, I guess, different skill sets,
Well,
right?
It could be assessing the same skill set.
Okay.
And Craig, you might want to talk more.
So the STAR 360 and the iReady will test more of the skills. Do you know the skills? Where the performance assessments is, can you apply the skills that you know?
Gotcha.
And yeah, pen and paper, but ideally hands-on, project-based type of performance assessments.
Yeah, not, when I said pen to paper, not digital, it's not
Right.
done on a
And
keyboard,
not-
but it's interactive, it's
Right.
It could be a
Fine, it's
it could be a
using-
PowerPoint to
Right,
show,
okay.
demonstrate
Not
that they
a
can
standard
apply what
test.
they,
Yep.
yeah.
Multiple choice, none
Yep.
of that, like, multiple choice, true, false,
Right.
not that kind
a
of.
little bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
Exactly. Really play to their strengths in some cases.
And the teachers are working at both schools and across the district, but working on developing those performance assessments. So we don't have them in place. It's not that we're gonna buy it or take them from somewhere. Our teachers are working together, in partnership to create these performance assessments for the students.
Well, and you saw a few weeks ago, the product of performance assessment, which was the remote control cars,
Controls cars, yes.
right?
Yep.
So like that.
Gotcha.
We good to move on to goal 3?
Sounds good.
Perfect.
And I think our third one, I think we're actually on the same
Yes,
one.
yes, yeah, the right number.
A focus on attendance. So as we start to look at this, and I can speak from my experience, is that attendance was also something that was on the past school improvement plan. I don't think I paid the attention to it that I should have. So that's why I really wanted to focus on it this year, put some new things in place, different ways that we could work with our kids to build excitement, to communicate with parents, as well as some other organizations in the area. The importance of attendance, how it does impact the students, how it does have a negative impact on their academics, as well as their growth if they're not there, or even if they're just missing time due to being tardy. So there's some different things that we put into place. I know that one of the things that we had talked about here is creating an attendance committee, a group of teachers as well as community or individuals from within the community, parents, if they wanted to be a part of this, they could come, talk about what can we do to build excitement, what can we do to get the word out about the importance. So a number of different things, and again, we also wanted to highlight that, a friendly competition.
Yes.
So, look at attendance at both Brookside and Memorial. And, I myself am very competitive. And I'm sure there are a lot of students and teachers in my building are very competitive and would really like to show Memorial that we are the best.
All right, well, we'll see.
All right, game on.
Yes. So
Lisa's response sounded kind of ominous. I'm not going to lie to you.
So we're really hoping that we can increase the communication about the importance of attendance at both schools, and really when we looked at the information about attendance, there's some times that our attendance is very poor. So trying to help target those times and speak to parents, send email blasts, it's still an important day, to come to school, whether it's before a holiday or an in-service day. Our notoriously low poor attendance days. So really trying to increase the communication and provide some information too, some resources for parents about you have to be in school to do well in school. So I think that often elementary school families may think, may not value as much as, high school, but it is just as important to be at school when you're in kindergarten and first and second grade. So we're going to work on that together this year as well.
That's great. And any questions or comments on Megan?
Question and a comment on that. So I guess first, if you're sending anything home, I was part of the Woodland School Council when we first did that, and when parents aren't expecting it, sometimes just to let them know it's going to be coming, I think there was concern around when it was first issued in terms of if it's going to everyone or just people with issues. Just communicating this is a focus for this year, so you'll be hearing from us, just so that people kind of know to expect it maybe.
Yes.
And also it resonates with me because it's not only disruptive for the child that's late or absent, but it's disruptive for the whole class when you come in late. And so I think it actually has a positive impact on the whole school when we're able to get people there on time. I'm not asking for the percentages now, but is there a tardy issue as well? I'm just curious.
I'm sure there is.
Okay.
We at this point this year we had chosen not to focus on the tardies, but I think that if we were to look at that information, I think that we would find that our tardies are a concern as well, and we could both look at that and get some information about that.
Is it pretty
So
accessible, Lisa, in terms of
Yes.
not a lot of work to
Yes.
pull? Okay,
Yes.
just curious. Thanks.
Yes. Yep.
Just to know a baseline, to know whether or not these
Absolutely.
targeted efforts have helped
Absolutely.
reduce
Yes.
both. Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other, Chris?
Do you have a target percentage that you're shooting for? I know that Woodland had some targets there.
So the same, we're both hoping to improve our attendance by 20%. So when we were very close in our percentage of students that were absent. So we were looking at about 20% to do 20% better, which I think for both of us was like 0.8 or to improve by 0.8 or one point.
And that's actually 20% of the absentee rate. So we just focused on the students that were absent and increasing by 20% with that select group. And when it came out to, I think it was like 3-point-something% for each school. It was eerie how similar we were in the absentee rate.
From both schools.
Both schools were
Yeah.
very, very similar.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, that was strange.
And the same trends as far as the half days or days
Yes.
leading up to a vacation.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Across the board.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to, Jen?
So you're trying to improve the gap, so 20% of the gap?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so do you guys do any trending going back like 1, 2, 3 years into whether or not you're seeing a decline in attendance, or has this been something just that you have been focused on for just this past year?
So for me, it was just to focus on this past year.
Okay.
But as I get more comfortable, I think that's important. I really enjoy numbers, so seeing, do we have a pattern here? Is it improving? Is it declining? If it is improving, we're doing something right. If it's declining, what were they doing that was so successful? Asking some of those questions.
Yeah, would you mind coming back, at another time and maybe giving us an update on whether or not you see trending moving in the positive or negative
Happy
direction?
to.
Thanks.
So Lisa, you had a fourth goal.
Yes, I had a fourth goal. So my fourth goal this one came primarily from my school council, my family, parents that are on the school council, looking at ways to create and maintain meaningful school-family partnerships. So I did choose to make that a goal in our school improvement plan. So I really had, in next year, we're hoping to reach out to families and staff to talk about, to gain some more information about what might be some barriers from allowing us to have real partnerships with families. We also, for me, I look at it when it's evaluation time, right? Jen and Eric. So you don't still evaluate?
Oh, yeah.
Evaluate? Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not as many as you, though.
So when we look at family partnerships or parent communication, is one of the standards. So really looking at, what makes a proficient teacher or needs improvement. So also involving the teachers in helping them look at what their communication is as well. And for myself as an administrator, how I'm communicating with families and what I can do to improve and work on those relationships as well. So that goal, so we would work to really gain some more parent emails, make sure that our Blackboard is, that I'm able to get messages out to a greater number of families. We also would say that there may be some training that's needed for families on some of the commonly used technology tools that we use. So oftentimes at our back to school night, teachers will help parents set up whether they're using some kind of classroom behavior plan. Dojo is popular. Sign Up Genius we're using a lot more in schools, so helping parents access those sites. Most people do have smartphones, so that we're able to work with them on getting using those tools to communicate with us. So we would be looking at ways to foster parent engagement, and then looking at our environment. Does the school represent our students? Does it represent our families? What are the barriers for more involvement? I think that when we have a big event, we have great attendance, whether it's our Monster Mash or our Fall Festival, but our PTOs are small. Our parents that participate as leaders in the building is a small number. So really and it's not reflective of our student body either. So really just looking at that as ways to create those partnerships.
I think if you figure that problem out, your attendance will go up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll see.
So Eric, you may have a leg up on you.
Yes, that was the plan all along.
Well, what I do really like about that goal is I think that schools can be really intimidating for so many families, and even I work in a school, and when I feel like, oh my God, I have to call the school or call the teacher, there's always that little bit of angst. So then you think about families who had a bad experience in school, or for whom the language is a challenge, and or the majority of our staff might look different than some of our parent population. So I really applaud that goal. I mean, all of the goals that you're putting together, but thinking of ways to bring people into our schools is so hugely important. All the research shows that when families are involved, our students perform more proficiently. So thank you for adding that in there. Before you move on, any other questions before you move on, Megan?
Just a comment along
Yes.
the same lines. Creating that environment, Lisa, to me this seems so impactful, and I love the fact that it was the school council that sort of came up with this kind of grassroots effort, because I think this has a significant potential in terms of having the school represent the population and including families. And I would consider myself technologically savvy, but I remember first learning about the portal, and I'm like, what are you talking about? So I mean, I can appreciate as a new parent, there's a lot to learn, and so providing trainings I think is a great idea to get people acclimated. And maybe, Eric, just a suggestion, because you don't have this goal, I might consider adding the email campaign to your attendance goal, because I think we send out so many communications via email that if you're able to increase that percentage, you're actually going to help. Not that I want you to win, but I think we all win if you both win, to get more people involved. I think email is probably one of the primary ways we contact families.
Are you talking about through Blackboard?
Just, I mean, email,
So we use that
Well,
Blackboard.
yeah, the
That's
Blackboard
always
system.
primary.
I don't know what percent of families, if you know now, and we found the percent that we didn't have at Woodland were the kids that weren't showing up, right? And so if you're able to capture them in their native language and get the communications out, it potentially could really.
What's great about Blackboard is it does translate
fantastic.
into a number of languages, so it is great, but you need to have the emails to be able to do
Yeah, and
it.
I wonder if we could figure out a way to send text
It is a feature.
rather
that's
than
cool.
Mr.
email.
Elmore taught me that. There is a feature for text. It hasn't
Not as
been
many
over.
people signed up for text, though.
Yeah, it hasn't been
That's
as
one of the
overly
issues.
successful.
I could use a training on
And-
that.
Right, and I think
I don't know, where do I do that? Have I done that,
Geez.
right?
I haven't.
So it's a great point, right?
It's a good question, because we've got a very high percentage signed up for email and phone calls, but a very small percentage for text, and there's a couple other ways. we can
So I would just question, when was the opportunity to do that? And as we start the new school year, could we improve that?
Because most people
That's a good
are
question.
text all the time rather than
Yeah,
email.
definitely.
I think that when Eric had shared it with me that it was an option of a text feature, so we looked into it, and there was a piece, because X2 is our database is feeds our Blackboard. So I think it maybe is something within our X2 that opens it for
I think it's the initial
Blackboard.
paperwork, and I think you can maybe adjust it in the portal, but I'd have to check that for sure.
Just as we're starting to
Yeah.
think about starting a new school year, if there's a way that we
Yeah.
can do it.
I think it would be fabulous to get a text and a quick reminder, I think would be
That's
would
it.
be great.
That's the only thing I would say about it, is you have to be careful about your messaging, that it's not just this huge, long message, just
Yes.
real quick.
Well, you're limited in
You're
characters.
limited
and
on the
all.
characters.
You know,
It's
back
almost
to
like
school
Twitter.
night tonight, you know, something
Absolutely, reminders.
simple.
Yep,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah, yep. Yes.
So I know you both provided some kind of an update on the goals for this year, but I'm wondering if maybe you want to just highlight one or two things that you're especially proud of or that you thought went really well this year. I know, Eric, you're in your first year, and I'm sure it went by in a somewhat of a blur.
Very much so.
It would be great to hear something that went really well.
You know, one of the things I was really excited about, one of the goals from last year was the book study. And there were supposed to be 2 books that were actually covered during it. We did not get to the second book. And the reason we didn't, there was such a buy-in for the first book that I didn't want to slam on the brakes and stop the momentum. The teachers were really involved in it. And the book was The Next Steps Forward in Guided Reading by Jan Richardson. It was something our instructional coach had done a PLC on. It was voluntary. And I know at Brookside, we had about 30 teachers who had volunteered to be a part of that. And it was wonderful. And the conversations that came up, the awareness of some of the current practices they have and some of the other practices that are out there, and how they could really change some of the things they were doing to be more impactful for kids, was amazing. So instead of stopping it midway and saying, no, we're going to move on to something else, we just continued it. But again, I was so excited that there was such buy-in, that teachers were wanting to be a part of this and giving freely of themselves to participate. I could not be happier. I think it says a lot for our instructional coach. I think it says a lot for our teachers and being professionals and wanting to continue to grow their practice and be reflective about the practice that they do have.
Great, thank you.
So one of the areas that was really exciting at Memorial this year, so we've been involved in a literacy grant the past 2 years and at both schools, and one of the main focus has been around reading to students, and then having opportunities for students to have class discussions that really are led by the students, and the teacher, may pose the question, but really takes a backseat in the discussion, and the students are able to have conversations about, well, I agree or disagree about that text, and this is why I think so. So as an administrator, we're able to observe that when we go into classrooms to see, that discourse going on. But we don't often have an opportunity to plan it and do that with students. So this year, one of our goals was to provide 6 read-alouds throughout the course of the year, and we did it by grade level. So we brought on, so it was Mrs. Rachel Driscoll and myself, and then the Director of Special Education, so Lucy Jenkins, Vicki Houston, Lisa Kincaid, Anita Amonte, our new social worker, my adjustment counselor and school psychologist. We each we partnered up, and we would go in and read a story to the students and then have a classroom discussion with the students. And it was great to be able to plan a lesson and then go in and carry it out. We did it by grade level, so we would teach 2 of us would teach 2 classes at a time, and it was fun. It was great to be with the students, and we were able to focus on social emotional learning. So we talked to students about their relationships and what it means to be a friend, and how to maybe get through some struggles or hard times. Craig was my partner one time. When my partner wasn't able to come, Mr. Consigli was able to come down, and we read the story together, and then we were able to have some really great conversations with students about their feelings and kind of their ideas about the book. So that was really, it was a great opportunity for all of us to work with the students, and in a different way than we're normally able to in our current roles. So.
If I could just piggyback on that for a minute, because I think your involvement, so this is a grant that you received.
Oh, yes.
And I've seen, I happen to be part of this also, but I've seen both of you, and the work that Lisa's talking about has involved 6 full-day training sessions in Leominster and Worcester and all over the state. And You bring a team of teachers every single time, and there's all kinds of experts have come in that have been really, some of them have been world-renowned, and to know that you're bringing that work back to the buildings, and the whole point of this grant is that the more students talk, the more likely they are to really promote reading comprehension, and so just to see two principals there giving up a lot of your time and really doing that work with your teachers and bringing that back into the classrooms is really powerful. I'm really glad that you brought that up tonight.
Yes, and the teachers are they really are bringing back what they're learning to their own classrooms and within their teams as well.
Yeah, that's great.
So, but it has been a big time commitment.
It has, yeah. Great.
Megan. Just a comment. So first off, I wanted to thank you because I think this is one of the first years that we've asked for an update on prior years, and I think it's really important to kind of, stop for a second and look back and say, did we have the right goals? Were we able to achieve them? Did it make sense? Eric, thank you for doing that on a plan that you didn't create. I'm sure that was extra interesting. And then Lisa, you said for the safety one, the goal is incomplete, and I commend you for being able to. We didn't finish this, and we wanted to, and we're still going to work on it.
Yeah.
But I just had to comment. So I happened to be in the building at Memorial on Valentine's Day, and so part of this talks about making the students feel physically safe and creating that environment. And there were 3 students that ran out of one of the rooms that had made Valentines for either the school resource officers or the special ops teams. And that to me just, it was so profound that they feel so safe in these individuals. There's no fear, like they consider them part of their team and their family at Memorial. And so I think, you didn't, maybe do all the steps here. There's a lot of great things being done, especially in regards to safety. So I hope you feel that you can take credit for that, because I think that work is really important, and that's going to impact those students as they go out through the district and get older when those become even more critical relationships.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, so I think, and I debated whether to just move it forward into, I think it will always be alive, that goal from last year. It will always be alive in our building, and I debated whether to keep it in the school improvement plan, and I chose not to, but again, I think it will be something that will continue as our work at all the schools, working on school safety and ensuring the safety of all our students and staff. Yes.
Excellent. Thanks.
So, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so let's move into family handbooks.
All right.
Oh, do we have to vote? Do we vote on the school improvement plans? We don't have to do it.
Yeah, I think it's
We
acceptable.
do? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the Brookside and Memorial school improvement plans? Megan, motion by Megan, second by Joe. All in favor?
Thank you.
Great.
So I think our handbooks will be very quick. We had, neither of us had, at Brookside and Memorial, we didn't have any updates other than changing staffing and some dates in the handbook. But I think we had a lot of changes last year, policy-wise and different things that we were working on as a district. And this year both schools did not have changes.
Exactly, minimal at best,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
more or less updates.
Yes.
Along the way.
Cleaning up.
I didn't notice a lot of red
No,
lines
there
in
was
there. Do we have a motion to accept the family handbooks? Motion by Chris, second by John. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
I was just going to ask just about recess time. I noticed in the handbooks we talk about lunch, and it's kind of together, like the lunch and the recess, if I understand it correctly. So I was curious how you feel about the students and their recess time, and if you think it's adequate right now, how it is, and if there's any possible changes that may be coming up or things that maybe, I know it's really important for our younger students to get that time for free play and to be outside.
It's interesting you bring that up because that's a conversation I know that we have had. Currently, our recess time sits about 15 minutes, but we are looking at extending that just because we know how important it is for students to get outside, fresh air, get rid of some of that energy. They're inside and they're really focusing throughout the course of the day. We want to give them a chance just to get out, to interact, to socialize, to run, jump, and play with their friends. So we're starting to have some of those conversations. I don't think we've had anything that, no definite changes that have come from it,
Okay.
but definitely having those conversations.
Okay.
Yes, but we agree. There should be times for more time outside for the students.
Yep.
Whenever possible. So we're looking at, so at Memorial we have a 45-minute block, so we've tried to do some rolling, going outside for recess as you're ready, as groups of children are ready. So some students could get, 20 minutes and close to 25 if they're, depending on how quickly they eat, which we don't want to rush their eating. That's also important that they're able to, have their lunch that is provided by the school or provided by parents, but also acknowledge that some kids might be ready to go at, 20-25 minutes, and we can get them out a little bit sooner. So we have dabbled with that a little bit as well,
Okay.
trying to make the recess a little bit longer. But we're looking at the schedule now, at both schools, trying to maximize learning time, but also acknowledging that time for play is important as well.
Yeah, because I just noticed in the handbook, lunch and recess is kind of combined, so
Yep.
curious to see how that was divided out.
So it's in a 45-minute block.
Right.
What ties us up too is that we have to, within the 45 minutes, it's also teachers' lunchtime, so that can impact, you have to we provide a half-hour lunch time, so that sometimes impacts our ability to, make some, not work on a half hour, 15 minutes. It's hard to navigate that, but we try to get creative on how we can try to maximize the 45 minutes. Some students take a half hour to eat, and some can eat in 15 minutes.
Okay,
So.
great. Thank you very much.
If I could just say, if it was that for staffing, then we
So I would love to see a budget proposal to provide part-time resources to fill that gap. If some individuals that were there for an hour could make a difference. So definitely, if that's something that would make a difference, I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, thank you.
Laura?
I noticed in the handbook it says that students will be notified in June for teacher placements. So I know we've changed that, and we're notifying our students and families in August via letter, so
Yep.
just
Good
something we
catch.
probably
Thank you,
want to
Laura.
look to
Thank you.
change. I think that was it.
Okay, any other questions or? All right, let's redo the motion. Do we have a motion to accept the handbooks? Chris, I think, yep. Motion by Chris, second by Joe, all in favor?
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
And then the final piece that you were asking us to report on was the school safety, which kind of ties into what Megan was talking about. So we do, at both schools, we participate in fire drills in collaboration with the Milford Fire Department, as well as a lockdown drill in working with the Milford Police Department. So we do practice those drills at our schools. Because our staff has had different training at both schools as far as, having, if you are able to leave a situation safely and get away from where the issue may be, our staff has been trained to and encouraged to make that decision, and we've really promoted empowering staff to, depending on what the situation is, make that decision if there was a situation at our school. But we haven't at the K-2 level gotten that in depth with our students. I think that that's something that we would need to work on because we try to keep it, the children are 5, 6, and 7 years old, so we try to keep it in a way that is developmentally appropriate to talk about with students, when we have to practice drills. So we haven't taken it to the next level at this point, although our staff is trained to move and react, and we empower them to move and react as they see fit as far as the school safety drills go. And again, it is something as a topic at school staff meetings at both schools. For both of us, but I haven't done an official school assembly with our students surrounding a lockdown or an emergency situation like that.
Now I can speak to Brookside. We have had a lockdown drill this year. That's something we did in advance, pass out the procedures to the staff, and we did ask the staff to have conversations with the students in the classroom. We thought it was much more appropriate to have those conversations in the classroom rather than as a whole school, because some of the questions they're going to ask, teachers would be more adept at handling them, at kind of being more honest about it, and making it much more comfortable, because that can be very uncomfortable, especially for some of those kindergartners. Some of the stories they've shared is that when they've had lockdowns in the past, that some of the kindergartners are so scared that even the simple rattling of a door handle gets them upset. So we really want to make sure that they feel very comfortable when having these conversations, and that they feel very safe in their classrooms with their teachers when they're able to ask them those questions. So now some of the other safety procedures and protocols that we have in place, that as you come to Brookside, and I think it's the same way with Memorial, is that all parents that arrive during the course of the day, they are asked to check in with the front office to share why they're there, the purpose they're there for, the student that they're there for before they're allowed to be buzzed in. Once they're buzzed in, they sign in and they're given a name tag. And then as they're in the building, you can easily tell if you see an unfamiliar face, have they checked in at the office, because they'll have a name tag. And the staff knows that if they don't have a name tag, that's somebody who has not passed through the office, and that's somebody who may not have access to our kids. So that's just one of those procedures that we've made sure that everybody is aware of, just to make sure that all of our friends are safe.
Same, so all of our staff wear badges, and where all of the doors are locked, obviously, at both schools, and staff have swipes to get into specific doors. They're able to swipe in, similar to, all of the schools. And we've really empowered staff to intervene if there is someone that's in the building that's not a staff member, that is not badged, to really stop the parent, the person, whoever it is, and alert the office as well. And they've all really, at both schools, done a great job at intervening if need be. So one of the questions was around any collaborations that we have, and I would say we do have strong partnerships with the Milford Police Department and Milford Fire Department. The school resource, as far as the Milford Police goes, the school resource officers are very present, I feel, in my building, and I think yours as well as the special operations team. The members of that team have really made themselves a presence in our buildings. I'd say at least twice a week, the special ops team, one or two may just say, I'm just here to take a walk through, and they'll take a walk through the building and back out the front door, and just to be a presence and be available if we need them. So I think that's been a new addition for us that's been positive as well.
No, and the constant, the school resource officers are always in the building. And I think that's important, because the kids get to see them, and they get to see them as somebody it's not afraid. They see the badge. It's not somebody you need to run from. They're there to help you. They're there to protect you. They're there to work with you. And for some of our students, I think that's such an important piece of it. So it's nice to have that constant presence there. If nothing else, as I said, just make you feel more comfortable.
And they will, our current school resource officer, and in past as well, he'll spend time in the classrooms reading to the students, or participating at lunch, or we invited him to our Memorial Day program, and he participated in that as well. So he has become a friendly and safe base for the students at the school. And we also have radios. Our two-way radios that we use a lot in the building to communicate with one another instead of a phone. There is a channel that you can switch to with a direct line to the Milford Police Department. So we're able to, if we're anywhere in the building and there's a situation that we need support, whether it's Milford Police, Milford Fire, emergency services, EMTs, we're able to just turn right to a radio station and radio where we're located at and what the emergency might be, and we're able to communicate right with the dispatcher directly. So I think that's been a positive addition to our schools as well. And I think that's Megan.
I think that collaboration is part of what makes our community so unique, and I think it's really so important. So I think that's fantastic. Has any individual in one of those capacities either reviewed, or have you thought about having them to review the safety protocols? Like, were they developed in conjunction, or have they taken a look at?
So I can actually answer that question, because it's across the board for all of our schools. So we sit down with both the fire and the police departments to kind of review plans, shift plans. They give input. We kind of, just like we would with anything.
So they've seen all the schools.
100%.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so they're able to like respond immediately. They
Yep.
know what, they know how the teachers are gonna react.
Okay.
And that's why, like, when we do a fire drill is a great example.
Sure.
Like, we get all the kids back in within a couple minutes
Yeah.
because, like, the communication just goes
Great.
like that, and they're just all back in the building.
Okay.
And that's part of that kind of collaboration. But, even, like, they'll give, principals they'll have conversations with principals if there's some, issue occurring, like, in town or in the neighborhood. So there's a lot of that kind of communication, too.
Yeah.
So it's ongoing. So it's not like one time we're sitting down for like a meeting, and we do that, but it's ongoing. So like after a fire drill, we get feedback from the fire department. After if there's an incident, we'll sit down and kind of debrief.
Okay.
What happened? How could we do it better? And that's just ongoing all the time. And I give both the the police department in Milford and the fire department a ton of credit because you hear stories, nationally about school versus the police department, and none of that is happening here. It's really like people are working just hand in hand, and you mentioned it yourself. Kids are running out and giving Valentine's
Absolutely.
to the officers because they really make the effort, and it starts in preschool all the way up to the high school. Officer Gresham and Castiglione are constantly just like interacting with our students. They sit down and probably check in with the principals on a regular, if not daily basis, just to make sure everything's going well. So it's a really nice partnership, and I think that's why whenever an issue arises, we're able to deal with it kind of efficiently, effectively, with the assurance that everybody's safe.
And you're comfortable the protocols are as up to date as they can be in terms of incorporating all that.
100%.
Great.
And we
Okay.
always there'll be, something will happen, and we'll say, wow, there's a gap there, and we'll address it.
Okay.
And we're always looking at different issues as they arise too.
Okay.
And it's different every year. Like different things will come up, or there'll be different things we're concerned about. And I think it's going very well.
And the school resource officers will speak to our staff as well. Almost yearly, they'll come in and talk to the
great.
staff about safety planning and, answer any questions that the staff may have. They're always willing to come to our staff meeting. But yes, we work with them on the plan, developing the plans,
Great.
but then when we carry out, maybe a drill, then we meet right after to debrief on how that actually went.
Great.
So,
Excellent. Thank you.
yeah.
And they're extremely responsive too.
Laura?
So I know we mentioned the lockdown procedures and some fire drills and things like that, but has there been any training for staff on, evacuation procedures such as like Alice, for example? No.
You're referring to the Alice program
Yeah.
that was did they recently have that in Mendon?
I mean, they do it in a couple different districts, I think.
So the Alice philosophy is kind of used across the Milford Public Schools. When we're talking about
Okay.
the training piece,
Yeah.
that's built in. I don't think we're calling it Alice, but it's the Alice principles.
Okay, so the staff is trained on that, and
And then, like when
Okay.
Lisa was talking about people
Right.
kind of taking, making decisions on the spot,
Mhm.
and not following blindly like a procedure, but making adjustments. That's really a lot.
So
of what
we've
the
had
Alice is about.
we've had staff training on responding to a situation where you would leave the area or
Right. Okay.
barricade yourself in the area, and they've worked with us on learning how to respond in a number of different crises. So we've had that training as a staff. And like I said, the school resource officers will come in and meet with us and review that with us at any point. All of our doors in the Milford Public Schools are numbered or lettered. At Memorial, they're lettered. So when there is a situation, we're able to say it's door D, and we can immediately get emergency services to that door. And the crew, our emergency personnel has those kind of that information as well, so that they
Okay.
can respond as quickly as possible to the buildings and to where the problem may be.
And additionally, each school vacation in summer, the police department is doing drills, and they're kind of going school to school, so it's kind of random, but just so they're familiar with the schools. And sometimes out of that, either the chief or one of the resource officers will say, hey, we were doing this and we noticed X, Y, or Z. What would happen in this circumstance? And there's an example where we come up with like a new product, another example where we come up with a new process or procedure.
Speaking for Brookside, I know during our recent lockdown, there were some questions from teachers if we were doing the Alice. And the school resource officers were there for the lockdown, and we've already gone ahead and penciled them in for the start of the year to come in to speak with the staff. to make sure that we're all on the same page as we start the school year nice and fresh.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you both very much.
Thank
great
you.
job, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the report of the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. McIntyre, Stacy Middle School Administrator Searches.
Yeah, so we're searching for a middle school principal as well as an assistant principal. The assistant principal is a new position. We posted both positions on the 14th. They'll both close on the 28th. We've got pre-screen teams tentatively in place for the 29th from 3 to 6 p.m., and that's a combination of teachers and administrators. On June 4th and 5th, we'll be interviewing for both the principal and assistant principal positions, and that'll be 2 teams, similar to kind of how we've run searches in the past. One team will be made up of kind of parents, community members, and administrators. Another team will be made up of teachers and administrators, and we're doing it both for the principal and the assistant principal search. I'll be kind of sending notifications out to folks, I believe tomorrow, because we'll have those teams finalized. I think we closed at that date for folks to say if they're interested or not. And one of the things I want to say just publicly is it's a good problem to have, but we got an overwhelming amount of teachers and parents who want to participate in these programs, and we're not going to be able to accommodate, unfortunately, everybody. So another opportunity to get involved is during the site visits and finalist forums, where we'll have an opportunity for we'll have somewhere between two and 5 finalists for both positions, and folks will have an opportunity to ask those the finalist questions and give feedback on the finalists as well. We're hoping to make an appointment for the principal on 6/12, and we'd like to make have the assistant principal be appointed around the 14th. And I'm saying around the 14th because we want the principal to be able to give input into one of the finalists who they're going to select for that position. Okay.
Everybody good? Any questions? All right. Thank you for all your work on that, and we'll look forward to hearing.
Yeah, and we'll
the
give updates
updates.
as we kind of go through the
Perfect.
process.
Thank you. Okay, report of the Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Consigli, MCIEA and MTA side letter.
Thank you. So when we joined MCIEA, part of that organization is basically has 2 criteria. The union president and the superintendent have to be on board, and I think obviously Kevin's on board, but the union has really embraced the process, and they're fully, at least for the year, committed to doing it again. I think it speaks to how last year went with the rollout of MCIEA with the coaching, and they didn't, it wasn't punitive in any way. So I think in that way they're really, I guess, on board, and it's growing. Last year we had folks from Stacy and the high school. Stacy's growing where Stacy's growing a little bit, I guess better is the right word, and only because of the way they're set up. So teams of teachers are now joined together and are getting some coaching through MCIEA. So we're looking for that to grow. But more importantly, it's going down to Brookside and Memorial. They spoke to that a little bit. That's the performance assessment that they were referring to. So there's a group of about 15 to 20 teachers that'll be working directly with MCIEA and learning how to do performance assessments. But then Woodland also. Woodland has right now 9 teachers that are going to be going through the process. A couple 3rd grade, couple 4th grade, 3 5th grade, and then our instructional coach and reading specialist. So what I'm going to pass around is a side letter that just, again, the MTA is just saying that they're going to be a part of it, but it's going to be a year-to-year thing, basically. So hopefully it'll go well again this year, and then we can talk about it again next year. I don't know if anybody has questions about that.
You talk about the teachers going through the process. Can you just
Elaborate again
Sure.
on what that entails.
Sure. So every summer there's a summer institute where they learn about performance assessments. They have 2 days that they attend. They get stipended for it. And then after the Learning Institute, there's 3 or 4 days during the year where a coach comes out from MCIEA and works with them on the performance assessments that they're actually creating. And they're quality performance assessments, which means that it goes through a set of protocols through that team. So if there's a team of 8 people, 8 people are evaluating the person's performance assessment, whether it's in their content or not. They're just giving feedback and making sure that the standards that they say that they're asking about are actually being evaluated through the performance assessment. So that's kind of the process that it goes through.
Were any of Milford staff part of the team that assesses in other districts?
Let's see. I don't know that we've gotten that far with the group that I talked about. However, we had a group of 4th grade teachers and a group of 7th grade teachers. 4th grade math, all of our 4th grade math and all of our 7th grade math, 7th grade science participated in a cross-district performance assessment that they all agreed on, cross-district. So they went through the process, and then they actually gave the assessment to the students. We haven't gotten feedback yet on that. But part of that process is they want to make sure that the scoring is calibrated. So if I rated a kid as proficient, you could get it and Meg would get it in a double blind scoring and be able to determine whether the way that I score is the same way that you score and the same way that you score, so that we can see if all the districts are scoring the same way. And proficient in my district is the same as your district.
Gotcha.
So you have something that
Oh
we
yeah,
will sign tonight?
I'm sorry, I'll pass that.
Okay, no, that's fine.
I'll pass the letter around. You'll see that the e-board signed it already.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for all your work and your leadership with that. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, Mrs. Perry, report of the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Human Resources.
Yes, I have for the committee's approval this evening, warrants in the amount of $1,082,344.24.
Do we have a motion to approve the warrant? A motion by Joe, second by Jim. All in favor?
We also have a budget update, and you can see at the close of May, we have $166,000 to finish the school year. So essentially, for the month of June, Maintenance Department, Mr. Quinn will release some of the projects for June out of his maintenance budget. And in addition, we have personnel obligations at the end of the year that cannot be encumbered as salary. We will meet those. And I believe we will finish the year with about $7,000 in the black. And it'll be important to finish the year in terms of circuit breaker with the most that we can carry over. So I'm hoping for that to follow through, as we've received notification this week that there was a student placed in a $400,000 a year placement for next year, and Milford's obligation will be half of that. So with that news, it'll be very important to carry over as much in our circuit breaker revolving to offset some of that cost. So that would be our goal. So having said that, we also have personnel appointments for your review. No vote is required. It's for your information only. Okay.
Yes.
Kevin, when we look at,
Like the line items, the transportation services, which you've alluded to before, just the costs have gone up. Where does that, if we're in the negative, where does that money come from to offset that?
So if you look at the summary, Chris, essentially what I do at this point every week, I will look at instruction. So if you just quickly look at teachers' classroom, that $192,000.
Yep.
Again, a portion of that will have to go over to the long-term subline, which is 71,000 in the red.
Right.
But essentially, I'm going through and I'm obligating the remaining of those funds off to the transportation.
Okay.
So I'll go through, I look at every PO that's encumbered, make sure that it's a live purchase order and it needs to be encumbered. If not, I will start to close out purchase orders that do not need to be obligated. So essentially, I will look at each one of the lines, look at where I can make up that deficit, and make sure at the end of the year that we are solvent. And I'll start to do that now every week.
And these are conversations we're having with principals and directors as well.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
So money's just not disappearing.
Right, exactly, yeah, it just, when you see, obviously, and we've discussed it before, that
Absolutely.
transportation's been a high cost, but obviously, yeah, the money has to move in a sense, from where we thought we could spend it in one area and move it over, so just.
Correct.
And essentially, Chris, at the end of June, I will formally do that with the school committee. I will bring all of the different surplus accounts and the deficit accounts, and we will balance our budget at the end of June.
Right.
But as I was talking to Kevin earlier today, we're not the only district that are having transportation issues. So the Deputy Commissioner of Business at the DESC has created what he's referring to as special ed transportation. It's almost like the state went out and did a very large bid procurement, and they're advocating that districts look at this, the bids that they've acquired in routing. And so what they want us to do is essentially look at those bids that they have available to us and make sure that what we're getting for local bids aren't higher than that. So if in fact it is higher than that, we start to use the state vendors. So we're going to look at that over the summer, Lenny and I.
And this is, I mean, it's a statewide issue, and it's, just similar like to the out-of-district expenses. Milford is not unique in that regard. Every district in the Commonwealth is struggling with that, as well as transportation.
And the circuit breaker, I know that it'll offset the tuition for for IEP-driven out-of-district placements. Does the circuit breaker also offset some of the transportation for IEP-driven?
No.
It doesn't? Just
It's only
just
allowed
tuition.
for tuition, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Or I shouldn't say that. They wouldn't frown upon that, Chris. They like it, the Department of Ed would like you to keep that clean for reporting, so they recommend that you use it for out-of-district tuition, which we more than easily can
Was your
obligate
question saying, is
those
it
funds.
calculated into the reimbursement?
Well, I guess, it's two different line items, I guess, right? Where you have transportation is one line item, and then tuition, I guess tuition, there's a few line items.
There's three. There's
Yeah.
collaborative, private.
Right, yeah. I wasn't sure if those line items take into account out-of-district placements based off of IEP services.
So we use our circuit breaker strictly for out-of-district tuition,
Right.
except, I don't know if this is helpful to your question, but when we're building the circuit breaker expenses for the reimbursement, the transportation is if the transportation is part of the student's IEP, we can count that towards
Right, okay.
the reimbursement that we would be
Gotcha.
getting back to Milford.
Gotcha. Yep.
To get over that threshold, which I think right now is just under 50,000.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
We're going to move into an update on school committee operational goals. And I think, Megan, you're going to take the lead on that?
Just a brief update to the committee. I think all we've been working on these in part, but just to provide the group an update. So in regards to long-range facilities planning, I know, Kevin, you're planning to come back to the group in June. So I think we'll have kind of a better assessment overall of that goal once we have that update. In regards to student achievement, that goal for this year was really focused on the budget. And so again, thanks to town meeting for supporting the budget that we proposed for this year. I do think there's probably an advocacy and training component of that we could continue potentially next year, but I think we've met the goal this year in terms of the budget increase that we received. And then the last goal was around communication and collaboration. And so Laura and I did hold the first office hour session, and Jim and Chris kindly volunteered to do the second, which will be June 11th, which is a Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Milford Town Library. So again, we'll share that on social media and with local media, and ask for
yeah,
central
we'll put it
offices
out
help
there, too.
Kevin in sharing that. Hopefully we'll get some attendees there. The meeting packets, again, are now available on the school's website, and the subcommittees, I think we started the goal development process. I think now that we've reconvened the subcommittees, we'll take another look at that, and kind of make sure that those goals make sense and roll them into next year. So that's an update.
All right. Any questions or comments on the goals from any member? Thank you.
And
Chris,
maybe just to add, sorry, Jen, those
No,
are
it's
intended
great.
to be kind of through June 30th, so the thought is we would reconvene at some point to look at goals for
Right.
the next calendar year, school year, I should say.
Perfect. Makes sense. Thanks to you and Laura for running the first office hours, and to Chris and Jim for taking on the second one. It's great. All right, moving right along, subcommittee updates. Do we have any of those tonight? Well, we really kind of just reorganized them, so
Yeah, I don't think
that may be a little bit premature.
Yeah.
We'll do that at the next meeting. Future agenda items. Anyone have anything they'd like to contribute? Megan?
Are there certain items, Kevin, that are set? I guess sometimes I think about things, but then like they're already coming. Is there?
Yeah,
sort
so
of-
we have kind of a yearly calendar. where
Okay,
there's-
could that
there's-
be shared? Is that?
Possibly. I don't.
Okay.
I'd have to think about from a format perspective. I
Okay.
don't know.
I just don't want to waste your time suggesting things that are going to be covered,
Yeah.
next month or something.
Let me talk to Melissa and see
Okay.
if there's a way to kind of easily share it with you, because like there's like annual votes, like when we
Sure.
join the collaborative or participate in school choice, and
Okay.
like these presentations always happen like
Certain
May,
time of year.
June.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your evaluation is set for June?
Correct.
Okay,
The next
Correct.
meeting.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the timeline and the
Great.
process.
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
And there's a number of things that people have requested that we put, I think, in either the two June meetings, or we pushed it out to July just based on
Sure.
on time.
Okay. The one thing I'd love to see, and I don't think I'd even want to see it until like maybe next November or December, but Craig, would be an update on like what we've implemented in regards to the stuff that you're doing with MC, IEA,
Okay.
EIA, I always go the wrong way.
EIO.
Like what we've already benefited from that, right? Because in going to that forum that I attended in Boston, like it was really impactful already, and so I'd love to just hear from a couple teachers that have
Sure.
implemented something that they've learned through some of that.
Well, I think, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I thought bringing in the STEM people at the middle school was really, I don't know, it was really informational, and I thought that the kids did a good job, and the teachers did a good job. So I think if we did something like that, maybe not every meeting, but even 4 times next year, but have it be focused on that kind of a thing.
Like students presenting their work, like
Yeah.
maybe a performance assessment example, then maybe the teachers could talk through the process.
I think that'd be
Is that
great.
okay?
Maybe the showcase could be like before the meeting starts, and then we could do a little
Okay.
highlight once we get going, just to kind
Okay.
of,
Yeah, maybe not, that was our first go-around, maybe not as
Absolutely.
lengthy. Okay, fair enough.
I just think they're coming up with some great things. I'd love to be able to highlight some of what they're doing.
Yeah, and
We'd have to look at the timing on that based on how we kind of roll out the performance assessments. We could definitely do something. in
And
the
that's why I'm
fall.
thinking like next, yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
So right now we have Superintendent's Evaluation. We have an eventual update on MCIA. Anything else that
So
people are
there was a
thinking about?
request for kind of teacher morale, and we've had to shift that back 2 times because for a couple different reasons. So I anticipate that's either, and I forget if it's going to be the first or second meeting in June. I just can't remember which one we scheduled it for. And there's a few other ones that people had requested that I know we've got on a future agenda. I just can't, off the top of my head, I just don't remember which one.
And maybe that's part of what I'm looking at. What do we already? What's out there that's already coming? Just so we're not
Yeah.
repeating the same things.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Let me think of a good way to do that.
Sure.
I just can't think of a good way right now.
Sure.
Because some of it is we just based on past agendas, but I think we do have some things like that are kind of laid out by month
Okay.
too.
Thanks.
Yeah, I got the impression from Melissa that she has this running calendar in her head. of
Okay.
How things kind of shake out. So
Yep.
maybe she could.
If anything
capture
happens to
some of that
Melissa, this
for
whole
us.
operation.
Well, I don't want.
collapses.
I'm not asking for a big time effort involved, but if there's a way to just share it.
Just a general timeline.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
We also have class size is something that I know we agreed
Recurring.
to bring up
Yeah, so
periodically.
that's on there once or twice
And,
during the year.
yeah. And then I think, Laura, you and I had talked about just kind of getting an update on where we are in terms of grade levels that are closed to bringing in students for school choice.
That we can
Yep.
do very quickly. That's like a
Yeah,
10-minute,
yeah,
5-minute.
that would be great.
thing.
I have a suggestion about the future agenda items. Even if, what if it was just put on this every month? Which,
Put on what?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the packet. So right on where it says future agenda items, you just have just bulleted list of what may be coming.
What's already slated for the next month would be great.
Yeah, let me see kind of. Let me check in with Melissa to see like what makes sense, because she kind of pulls.
It's like a trailer,
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be like an end scene, like in a Marvel movie?
maybe.
Thanks.
All right. Any old business that we need to discuss? All right. I think that brings us to adjournment. Would anyone care to make a motion to adjourn? Mr. Erickson, motion, seconded by Laura. All in favor? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.